I want to talk Detroit Lions. You guys talked about the OTAs were here last week. One of the things that, as I was going through, and shout out to our boy Broder here, who you can catch reporting Woodward Sports, wherever you can find it. He's down there busting the tires. He was down at OTAs, and coming out of it, one of the guys that he was impressed with was the guy that I said would lead the team in receiving touchdowns.
That's right.
Do you remember by the name of tight end Sam Laporta? So just a couple things I wanted to talk to you guys with, go back over with the, I wasn't here when OTAs was done, but can we agree that not only since hearing Brad Holmes after the draft, seeing guys at OTA, hearing what's coming out of camp, watching some tape, seeing Jack Campbell, doing drills and stuff like that, interacting with Calvin Shepard and different coaching staff members. Are we all in a good spot, and do we all like what we have in the direction we're moving forward here?
I would say so. Yeah. I mean,
for as much as you could take out OTAs and stuff like this, but what about some of the stuff that we heard about, Sam Laporta coming in and more impressing, and not just 1, 2, or 3 people, but do you put stock into that, or do you put it in the back of your mind, or go, okay, again, of course he is. It's Brad Holmes. What did you think? He was going to not draft good players that would help this team?
Yeah, I put some stock into it just because Sam Laporta is one of those guys that you expect to show out at a rookie mini camp. He just has so many physical tools, and he's one of those guys that, and I fell victim to it as well. I'm gonna out myself. I wasn't super happy when the pick was first made, but I also didn't really quite understand or comprehend at the moment how much he was stifled by Iowa and Spencer Petras. And seeing and hearing about him showing out at rookie minicamp, I think to myself, what could this guy do in a Ben Johnson offense with Jared Goff as his quarterback, with routes and schemes designed to get him open and get him in space and get him running after the catch? I get more and more excited about Sam Laporta every day. I think he's one of those guys that could become almost more of an offensive weapon than a tight end, because he has wide receiver speed and he can break tackles. I really like, this is very, very encouraging to me, because that was one I wasn't super excited about at the time, but that pick to me is aging like fine wine, and he is going to step in day one, especially depending on how they utilize him, and be the best tight end on the team. Certainly the most talented. They don't have a number 1 tight end. They were tight end by committee last year. It worked, but if they can get something out of Sam Laporta, I think that could really help elevate this offense.
There's one thing we're talking about talent. And there's one thing we're talking about, off-season training and different things like that, right? What did Dan Campbell say? We don't judge them in their in their sweats and stuff like this. It's about tape and things like this. The one thing that I like more hearing out of that is listening to these guys talk. And I think Peaceful Tim nails it when he says Laporta speaks like that MCDC language. Don't they all? When you heard from, obviously we expected it from Campbell. We expected it from Laporta being sort of a tight end. Brian Branch in the secondary. Got guys that have that mentality where you see, now it's the system, right? Now it's a process of bringing the mentality. Now you see where the interview process or something of what makes these guys tick to fill into what's going on and what's being built in Allen Park. The thing that I took out of it, nothing athletically, right? It's the same way. I'm going to get overblown excited about Laporta showing out in some drills, just like I'm not going to get over excited about Jahmyr Gibbs not doing any drills. Mm-hmm. But what I'm going to do is the excitement of being around, and are they all speaking the same language? Are they all reading from the same playbook? Or do they all have the same military spec? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is the way it's done. And from what I'm hearing, Spenny, is that's more so. If I was questionable of why a guy was drafted, it goes back to it, and it goes to Broderick Martin, right? And it goes to, who's the offensive dude? The offensive line dude looks like
Colby
your brother?
Swanning?
Yeah.
Sorsdahl.
So, yeah, right? It goes down because why? What does Brad Holmes do, and what does it sound like now? We need to see it play out. But he's consistently bringing in football players that help this team.
Yeah, it's Brad Holmes went out and got his guys. You saw how he reacted when he got them, and if we believe in Brad Holmes, if everyone believes in Holmes and believes in his talent evaluation, which has been, there's nothing you can say to the fact that he doesn't have great talent evaluation of players coming out of the draft. He went out there and he got his best guys. So I'm excited for it. I do think Sam Laporta will make a big contributor to this offense along with Gibbs, but we'll see. Obviously, I was a Carter guy. I would have loved Jalen Carter, but that wasn't the route they went, and I'm sticking with them. They haven't done anything to put me off of their ideas or their game plan when it comes to the draft so far. So I'm going to believe in Brad Holmes, his talent evaluation, and that, like Sam said, Sam Laporta is the best tight end on the roster already. Jack Campbell is the best linebacker on the roster already. Like, these guys are going to be day one starters, and they're going to be big contributors for this team this year.
No, and that's what you want, right? That's what you want. Was there anything that came out of camp that, sort of sparked your interest, like a sort of a guy? Because Broderick Martin was somebody that I wasn't really familiar with, but hearing what the coaches and stuff were talking about him, which I read I don't know who it was, but talking about how Dan Campbell being, the coach of putting everything together, about how organizational, how it is important, where that coaching is important. It's coaching. What did we see at OTAs? It wasn't Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell sitting there talking to guys. It's their coaches, right? It's their Antoine Randall Alls and the guys that are, the coaching these guys. Who are the guys in your building? So the message to me seems to be getting across.
Yeah. I hear a lot, too, about how Jack Campbell was basically exemplary. He came off as a leader. He came off as a guy that people gravitate towards. And that's something that I think we all anticipated that would happen coming out of Iowa, and why I wouldn't say I was super happy with the pick at the time, but it's another one that's aging better and better as time goes on. I mean, he's a guy that's expected to be the best linebacker on the team. And if he is the best linebacker on the team, that would actually, I think, be a bigger deal than people give credit for, because Alex Anzalone, he did have a good season last year, and Malcolm Rodriguez was objectively excellent for a 6th-round pick, or even just as a rookie overall.
Just as a rookie in general.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, for a 6th-round pick, he was outer space. Mm-hmm. But if we're talking about Jack Campbell as the guy that could almost be the day one leader of this linebacking core, and is a guy that they might groom to be the captain of this defense, I think it is a big deal. When you draft Jack Campbell 18 overall, you have high expectations. You expect him to be this team's, and I'm not saying talent for talent, you expect him to be the Roquan Smith, like the Demario Davis of this defense, mm-hmm. like the franchise linebacker. And he seems to have a lot of those traits that we all kind of knew he had. I don't want to be too cheesy about it, but Jack Campbell, when he was drafted, we all just said, Dan Campbell guy. And I know Dan Campbell guy, that's a trope that gets a little overused, but with Jack Campbell, it was as obvious as could possibly be. So if Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are filling their roster with those kind of guys, we'll see how well it works. I think it will. Brad Holmes has done nothing that indicates that he shouldn't have our faith. They ended the season very well last year, and I think with guys like Dan Campbell and Sam Laporta, like we mentioned, those are guys that are instant upgrades, which means they should instantly help their offense. And if we're talking about Jahmyr Gibbs too, I think he's an upgrade over DeAndre Swift, along with David Montgomery being an upgrade over Jamal Williams. I mean, it's exciting. This is an exciting time, and all the stuff I heard at a rookie minicamp, it's positive. All of it.
Yeah. And Broder, one of our Lions beat reporters, shout out Matt Broder, the man, the myth, the legend.
Broder's the man.
Had a good comment in the Woodward Sports chat. He said the new defensive line coach, John Scott Jr., the guy from Penn State, is being relied upon a ton to develop these young linemen. He's a big reason they didn't go after a defensive tackle early and targeted Martin and a ton of good UDFAs.
Which is great, which goes in, and I got this quote up by Peaceful Tim, and he's yelling it. And I tend to sort of agree with this, and this goes deeper than what the roster is. It goes into the coaching staff. It goes to the intricacies to who the gosh darn lunch person is. It does. When things are clicking beyond it, and that's the one thing is you understand is that building is clicking, right? Peaceful Tim, I love how Brad has built this roster, and I'll say this organization, to how this organization has been built. So I'm taking it bigger than just Brad, because they have a clear and precise vision, right? They have their own vision, and a lot of time we can't see it until after it's done. Now, I say the same thing about Steve Yzerman. I got the colored glasses because I rode shotgun for different things, so a lot of the same moves, but I see the same sort of things. A lot of times we don't see it till after it's done. But having those little things, like Broder mentions, because why? Because he's sitting there, right, at practice, because they're talking to him. Mm-hmm. If you're not following Broder on this network and you love the Lions, you're doing yourself a huge disservice.
Facts.
Yeah.
Right? Down there feeling that. And the whole thing is what I love too is there's a vibe. I can't wait to get down there at training camp this year. I felt it last year. And this year it's only going to be even bigger and bigger and bigger. You know what it's like to walk into a building that's electric, right? The epitome of this ever in my life was walking into the building for Game 4 of the 97 Cup Finals, knowing, right, and not being arrogant or cocky or whatever, but going that whole day knowing you weren't gonna lose. Now, didn't know it was gonna end up the way it ended up, but having that feeling, there was no question in my mind, right? No question in my mind about that day, and that's how electric it felt. You're talking about everything else. That's what these guys are doing, making it electric down there. Now, the great thing is you're not gonna have to take my word for it, because they hold open practices, and you guys can get out there just like I get out there and stuff like this, and we can all vibe it and feel it.
I had a lot of fun going to training camp last year. I can't wait to get done. And we talked about that on heavyweights the other day, like what matchups you're excited to see at training camp, because last year seeing Amon-Ra St. Brown go at it with Jeff Okuda was awesome to watch, because and Jeff Okuda, was a mild-mannered guy, but him and Amon-Ra almost came to blows a couple times. I can't wait to see Amon-Ra St. Brown go at it with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Because Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is not mild-mannered at all. He'll tell you what he's thinking, and they're going to be chirping, getting it. It's going to be awesome. It's
going to make them better. It's going to be that competitiveness in practice. I used to say it all the time. You know why the grind line was so effective in the games? Because we never got to touch a puck in practice. Yep. We touch it in the games.